It is a cold, like 30-degree morning out here, but the sun is shining, and they saying it's supposed to get warmer as the day goes. So I'm hoping for the best. As you saw in the last videos, got it completely tore down, the mill. Had shaft issues, mandrel shaft. It was one thing, it was another. I got the one I'm going to be putting back on the mill. I had it already cleaned up, ready to put back in a sense of the shaft was stripped. However, the one that I took off the mill, I was having a really hard time getting the pulleys that control the forward and backwards off. Oh, coffee's hot. Basically, man, that sun's bright. Let me turn around here, see where we can. Okay, right here is good. So basically, they was on there. I made some hooks and used the chain for a pulley puller. Put a 2-ton bottle jack on it, and they still wouldn't break loose. I mean, and the one that was giving me the most problems was, I'll show you from the other one that I took off the shaft that I'm going to be putting back, is this small one. It's one on the drive side for forward and reverse of the carriage. Now, I'm not putting those back on, but I still didn't want to bust and mess up those pulleys because they're hard to get. You know, I mean, that's old flat belt pulleys, and you know, they're just not super common anymore. You can pick them up at flea markets and stuff like that, probably pretty cheap, but I just didn't want to bust them, just due to the age. But ended up, we put a lot of heat on it. I had that thing cherry red. I was even looking for places that might have been welded at one point in time. Nothing. So I ended up, I had to bust the little one out. I knocked the center parts around the hub out, and then we cut the hub and got it off. Really didn't want to. It kind of was discouraging, but I'd spent 3 days beating and pushing on that and pulling on that, and it wouldn't move. I mean, even a slightest. It just wouldn't budge. But as soon as I got it cut, she started moving, and what it was is it had slipped on the shaft sometime in its past and wore a groove in it, so it could not come over that groove. It was such a tight tolerance, it just was not happening. The big pulley, however, there's a big pulley on it. I was able to notch the hub assembly, just grind into the hub, and was able to get it off. I didn't damage it, but very little. It could still be used very easily. Just a little bit of brazing, and she's ready to go back. But anyway, the good of it was I got those bearings off, and those bearings are better than the bearings that I took off of the shaft that I'm going to be putting back. So today I'm going to clean up, I'm going to set up my solar panels, and I'm going to clean up the shaft going back, fingers crossed, and I'll pull those shafts side by side to give y'all kind of a comparison to what I've learned via the YouTube and internet and NC State, some old videos that they had. I won't know if the shaft that I'm putting back on there is better until I get it set into place. Then I can set the bearings up and put my dial indicator on it and see if they show anything out of whack. But let me get my stuff set up, and then I'll be right back, and I'll show you the difference in the two collars, arbors, whatever you want to call them, on these shafts. All right. Okay, so I had to get my solar panel set up so I could get me some power over here, get my batteries going. I gotta make one little jump with some cables, but it ain't no big deal. Anyway, so I'll show you what I got going on, what I had to do yesterday. Finally, like I say, had to bust the hub out of this one. That's so unfortunate. When it fell, it busted that piece off that little lip, but it was just what it was. These old pulleys have been on here so long, it's just pitiful. Now I got a whole another set of these pulleys that did come off good. Right here you see how I cut these little relief cuts in the hub. I just used a grinder. Didn't get all the way through, but it was just enough that it was able to release pressure and allowed me to knock that out. You can see we hit it pretty hard to get it to start moving. That one got heated too, and it still wouldn't move. But those relief cuts, I was able to get in there and cut those reliefs. But this one was such a small center, we couldn't do it. So here's what I wanted to show you. This is what I found. So this is the shaft that I took off. This has got roughly a 4-inch arbor. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but basically this thing is flat all the way down to, like, I don't know, it's hard to turn. I got maybe 3/4 to an inch of flat with only about 1/4 to 3/8 of dish here inside to allow that blade to move. This is a really small arbor versus the one I'm going to put on. It's kind of dirty, I got to clean it up, but it's got about a 1/2 to 3/4 inch flat, but it's also got about a 1/2 or an inch almost here of space for that blade to move. And from my understanding of the videos that I've watched and the people I've talked to, that blade has got to have so much space between the actual shaft where it mounts, the center hole, and the part that actually touches the rim of the center of the saw, the actual part that squeezes that part of the saw. It's got to have a space there. If that makes any sense. I know I'm not the best to explain this. There's a bunch of people out there that knows a lot more about this. Just learning. But I'm hoping that bigger space, if this is good, will actually help in the long run. That was not the problem with this. This surface was off like 10 thousandths of rotating it from one side to the other, and was causing the blade to walk. I don't know if you guys can see it. It was just like, from the guides, you could actually measure the guides, and I was getting a 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch both ways from center of walk, because this was not right. So I'm hoping that one's better. I won't know till I get it on there and put a dial indicator on it and actually check it. I got a really rough system of the dial indicator. It's not a super precise, but as long as that dial indicator don't move on its own and you don't move it, then you should get a pretty accurate reading. But everything I found, like I say, I watched an NC State video from several years ago, and they done a video on those particular arbors, and they was saying anything over 2 thousandths is bad. I was getting 10 to 12 in a 4-inch space. That's a really small space to get that much movement. They was doing theirs on like a 6 or 8 inch. And from my understanding now, they don't come out with anything smaller than like 6 or 8 inches. So I don't know what age or what saw that was intended for, that big flat spot. It's supposed to be a little bit of a bevel too, but I don't have a straight edge straight enough, a machinist straight edge, to really put on there to see, to gauge, feel it, to make sure. I'm just hoping for the best that is beveled correctly enough to be right. Once I get that all right, then I'll go back and double check my carriage and everything. But you can watch the saw blade do its own thing. So the carriage, I know, is not any issue there as far as what was doing. It was leading the saw. I had a little over a 1/4 inch of lead into the log, and it was still pushing the saw out so hard that it got it hot and popped the dish backwards. I was able to catch it early, and I don't think I hurt the saw blade, because once it cooled down, it popped right back in and everything feels fine. I have another blade to put on it. I just didn't want to put it on just yet. But right now I'm going to clean this shaft up, just lightly get the wire wheel on it and go down it and clean it up and clean up my bearings, because I will not be going back with those flat belt pulleys. I'm going to be converting over to hydraulic. But I want to get this shaft on and check it so that I can find out if it's any good, or if I'm going to have to go to the machine shop and find another shaft somewhere. So Now you guys know the problems that I've been having. I didn't really notice this problem until I put the third bearing on the back. And I think what it was is everything else is so wore. It was hiding a majority of it. You know, it was a mixture of this, that, and everything else. So I just accused it, you know, what little I was off to, well, just an old mill, like everybody else does. But after putting that third bearing back there, because I had so much flex, I was worried. That's where I was getting a lot of my slippage on my belts. I hadn't ran it. And now I understand that by putting that third bearing back there, I actually forced all of that movement to my blade. So it's like having two kids on a jump rope and both of them's hands are moving, but they don't have to move a lot to get that rope to swing and do its thing. But then you put that jump rope in a vise on one end and hold it solid. Well, then the kid that is got to turn his hand to get that jump rope to do the same thing has got to move a lot more. So now all the movement is on his end to get that rope to balance out. So that's the way it was explained to me. Made sense in my head, that by mounting that third bearing back there and solid, making that part solid, it sent all that rotation and vibration and twist and wobble and all that crazy jazz to the blade. And I didn't notice it as bad when I was just getting the bark off this log, but I kept noticing my guides was burning up on the one side, so I kept pecking them back. And about every pass, my guide was, my saw blade guide was getting burned off, and I'm running wide oak on these things. So it's not common to have that burning off that quick. But just to keep saw blade in line, I was having to do it. So I thought, well, maybe it's something else. So I tapped on the other guide, and that's when I started realizing once we got down to a square cant, once we got all the junk off, I thought, well, this is when it should saw straightest. It didn't. It started wanting to lead out hard. And then I noticed that the blade actually had buckled back about 3/4 of the way through the log. And so I pulled it out, shut the saw down. My bearings didn't get hot, thankfully, but the blade did right around. But luckily we got it shut down in time that, like I say, it was able to cool down relatively quick, and I was able to just bump it and it popped back. The dish did. So I'm hoping no damage was done on that. But like I say, let's get this, I'm going to get this shaft cleaned up, and I'll start putting it back, and we'll walk you guys through how I done it, and everybody can tell me how wrong I am. No, but seriously though, I'm not no expert at this. I'm just doing with what I got. I don't have a lot of the specialty tools. I'm just checking it the best of my ability with what I have. And from what I watched on a lot of the other more technical guys, basically I was checking it correctly. I just may not have the stands that they had to hold down everything. So even if I'm off, I'm not off by that much. A couple thousandths at best, but as off as that shaft was, I know I'm off pretty daggone bad for what that saw should be doing. So I'm gonna get to work. Okay, so I didn't realize I didn't have a camera on most of this time, but it's probably for the best. It took me a while to get the race on for this bearing. The way these bearings are made, and I didn't even know this till I got tore into them. They're basically, let me turn the camera around here. Sorry about all the movement. So this is a broke piece, but you see they're just, I don't know if you can tell, there's rollers in there, big fat rollers in there. I might be able to get it out. This is the old bearing. Yeah. So right there's what you got. This is the one actually off of this old shaft that I'm putting back on. Now there was some pieces of the two that I used off of this older one. This camera lighting is terrible in here. So yeah, there were some pieces that I used. It was this little keeper over here. I actually got one sitting here. That'll be a little easier. It's like this. I put you can see I got a I got a clamp around that one. It's because it broke. This is the one that was actually broke that came out of the one I was using. It was not broke, it was cracked when I got it, but I was using it to hammer the race in because it slides down and fits against it good, so I know there's no kind of mushrooming or nothing. And when I did, I hit it and it busted apart on me, so I had to put the hose clamp on it to get it to slide back together to tap it on back down on there. Yes, I was hitting it pretty good. There's some places in this old shaft that is rusted and got the little pits and things like that. I tried to sand and grind them off, but I didn't want to grind too hard because I still want a snug fit. Give you a little bit of back history on this particular mandrel. This mandrel is the mandrel that came with the original Sawmill that I picked up from my father-in-law. It had been sitting out in the woods. We actually cut a tree out of this thing. No roof, no cover for, we know of, at least 25-30 years. So I'm hoping this is still good. It wasn't run during that time or nothing like that. There was nothing really around it to hit it, so providing that it didn't warp coming down the road or nothing like that, all the bouncing, might still be good, or providing that it wasn't bad to start with. The mandrel I was running was from the second Mandrels that I got when I put this thing together. That was from the same unit that the carriage is from. This is two Mandrels pieced together with some custom parts of my own, the log turners and things of that sort. And there'll be a lot more custom stuff that I put on it for my own personal preference, like the hydraulics and stuff like that. I'm going to keep the electric log turner, and I may do an electric forward and reverse. My dad, he's got a really bad shoulder. He can't pull this thing for, I mean, he can pull it a couple times, but all day it ain't going to happen. So, and for anybody that's ever pulled one of these things all day, it's rough on the shoulder, no matter how good it is. So I may end up fixing like a little button or something here with electric. But long story short, I got the one bearing on. I'm going to go get the other bearing, slide it on. Then I'll be sliding it over to my actual area where it goes and tighten down the nuts, and we'll see how everything lines up. Let me get the other bearing, and once I get it set in place, I'll kind of show you guys what I got going on from there. Alright, now I'm going to go get my dowel, and I'm going to screw it to this board, set it up. Got to do some figuring here with the board to try to keep it solid. But if I can get this mounted solid like I did last time, it'll be screwed to this board, which is screwed to the carriage, which is actually riding right on the edge of this. So that'll tell me whether this is off without having to put the blade on it. I hope you guys can see this. Just a basic dial indicator. And what it does, for those that don't know, is when you push this little thing, I don't know if you guys can see it, I'll get you a closer look, but it moves and it measures the thousandths, so it's pretty precise. It's nothing super fancy, just a basic one. I think I paid $13–14 for it, because it ain't got all the gizmo to attach it. It's got a little ball down here to where it can roll. And I just made me a little homemade washer out of some plastic, because the plastic will actually go inside that bigger hole so that I can screw it in. I got to set up my board here a little better. Forgot my drill bit. This is what takes so long when I'm working, is climbing in and out of places when you're by yourself. Alright, so I had to take a little break there. I had to go look at something. Thought somebody was coming. My brother came over and we had to go look at a truck bed. But anyway, I want to show you guys where I got to right before I left. I had him help me put the blade on. So yeah, blade's back on. These two are where they are basically going to go. I got to take and put some stops in, tighten down some, I don't know if you can see me, tighten down some bolts. What I wanted to show you, I'm going to get down and actually show you, is before, when I had the guides out there at the end, I don't know if you guys can see it way out there, I was getting a full 1/4 inch, which is basically from center, it was like 1/8 of an inch each way. So I was getting a full 1/4 inch of movement in total. Now, with the blade on and the new shaft, I don't know if I can do this while standing here because this thing is that sensitive. I have the dial indicator. Yeah, see, I'm just barely moving it. But anyway, I got the dial indicator here, and I'm getting a little bit of fluctuation. But in total of it moving, anyway, it's hard to do trying to hold the camera and standing on this platform, because actually just me standing here causes that thing to barely move. That thing is so sensitive, it's pitiful, but that's what we wanted. Ended up, when I checked it, standing over there in the off on the dirt and going around with it, I'm not but 15 thousandths either way of a swing. To give you an idea, 1/4 of an inch is 250 thousandths, I think I was told. So 250 thousandths is what it was. Now it's down to 15. I can deal with that. I know there's probably a lot better out there, but with the wire and stuff that's in this blade and a little bit dimples here and there, it's got a little bit of grease, saw stuff stuck to it from rubbing that. So I mean, it's literally the amount of movement in it I'm not going to worry about, because a lot of the movement that's in it, I don't know if you guys can tell, a lot of it is going to be this stuff here. It's kind of a little bit of rough where it rubs the guides down there. But by eye, like, I can't see down there the 15 thousandths of movement. It's not enough movement that I can actually tell between the teeth being set the way they are and all that stuff. So I'm going to rock and roll with it. I'm going to put the third bearing on. I'm going to put the pulleys on, put the third bearing on. I'm going to tighten everything down in these bearings, all my set screws and things like that, tighten them down real good and tight. And then I'm converting to hydraulics. So I'm actually going to be doing some measuring for some hydraulics. Basically, what I'm going to do, to give you guys an idea, I have it's a log splitter kit is what I bought, right? So I bought a log splitter kit, and what that kit came with was the hydraulic controls, forward and backwards on the controls. That's pressure forward and reverse, because that's the way those hydraulic rams work. They don't have spring pressure pulling them back. So I'm going to actually run this thing, instead of running it on where it's at normally, is that PTO has got to be engaged. This blade has got to be spinning in order for that original system to work. I'm only going to be running on one belt, so I got a pulley, and I'm going to run on that. I'm missing one V-belt on the front of that crank. I'm going to put that V-belt over to that pulley. That's going to run my hydraulic pump. And that hydraulic pump could actually, I mean, truth be told, I could probably have run an old power steering pump. Would have basically done the same thing. But I got the kit and everything. It was pretty cheap. I think I got it for like 120 some bucks off of Amazon. So it was a relatively good price, and I figured it was a true hydraulic pump. It put out a little more PSI than what, or ever how hydraulic fluid is moved through the pump. I forget what it's not PSI, it's something else. Anyway, it had more than what a standard, the flow rate, that's what it was, gallons per minute, was more than what a standard power steering pump was. So I got that instead. Anyway, I got a big tank here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run that pump. It's going to sit here. It's going to pull fluid from that, run it over to a hydraulic motor that is going to mount right on top of there, and it's going to be a chain driven down to there. Now basically what this is going to do is run through and turn those pulleys that's in there. I'll show you guys these pulleys. It's going to turn these, because these is actually what turns, I don't know if you guys can see, that right there gear set. See that little gear set? That turns that big gear, which goes in there and turns the drum back inside there, which allows it to go forward and backwards. So, to break it down, I'm going to have my lever is going to basically, this is all going to be boxed in, and I'll have a lever here about the same size as a standard lever. But instead of going forward to tighten up belts and you pushing a little harder and then jerking and stuff like that through it, it's actually going to be a smoother pull through the mill. You'll be able to watch your blade, you'll be able to watch everything, and it won't be a matter of, well, I got to pull real hard. You can set your own feed to just a very light pull on everything. And I'll have hydraulics that way if I decide to add any other hydraulic add-ons. So, plus, on top of all that, if I'm not running on that, on the PTO, I'm running on the motor. So I'll be able to just start the engine up, not engage the PTO, and I'll be able to pull this carriage forward and backwards, whatever. If I need to disengage and continue to move my carriage, like to get it out of the log, I can do that. Not no big deal. Good news, I got all this back together, and it does seem like it's going to be a much better shaft, which is awesome. I'm so thankful that that worked out. I'm so thankful that that don't move. We still got to test it, and the only way I can do that is to get this pulleys and stuff back together and get that pump on there and get it running hydraulically. The reason I don't want to just throw those other pulleys on there and put it back with the belts, I despise those belts from the get-go. They've been nothing but problems, and I figured, you know what, while I got it tore apart and everything is already down, might as well go ahead and do it that way and get it done right. So I'm going to take my little gauge off, put it up, get some of my tools picked up, and it's still pretty early in the day. I mean, we still got a lot of daylight, but I'm probably going to go help Hannah build some raised beds. So hopefully we can get a little bit of that done. Then tomorrow I'll be back out because the wind's starting to pick up here and it's going to get cold. So but tomorrow I'm going to come back out and probably work on that stuff. The hydraulics, getting this shaft finished up, put into place, and yeah, all that good stuff. So for those of you who are wondering how the tear down and build back is going, so far everything's testing really good on the shaft, even though that shaft is a much older shaft. So yeah, I want to thank everybody for that has been watching. I want to thank everybody that's been commenting. I'm trying to get through the comments and get back to you. I see them, but I don't get a chance to reply right away. But I get an alert on my phone that I've got them. I need to get on there and actually reply to all you guys. So bear with me. I'm not the best on keeping up with that sort of stuff. That being said, I did, and I want to do a little shout out. I got a comment from one of my favorite YouTubers to watch, Frickin' Jeep. Frickin' Jeep actually watches or has watched my YouTube channel. Thank you. Awesome, dude. Huge fan. Straight up. Started watching you as soon as I got one of these meals. Like I found you, started watching you, been watching you ever since. So that being said, that was kind of an awesome feeling for me. Been a very young YouTube channel. Not a whole lot out there, a lot of subscribers or what have you, but the ones of you that are subscribed, y'all are great, y'all are awesome, and I appreciate all the comments, and I appreciate you just subscribing. You know, it kind of lets us know that, or lets me know, because I do most of the videos. She does all the uploading now. So, yeah, it lets me know that I ain't doing nothing too crazy that nobody wants to watch. So, I'm going to keep chipping away at this old sawmill, and one day I will get down there to the old wood miser. Not wood miser, Woodland Mills. I don't know why I said wood miser. It's a Woodland Mills. I got the hat. I'm going to get down there and take the cover off it. It hasn't been uncovered all winter. I'm going to get the cover off it and clean everything up on it. Just check everything, make sure it still runs. The reason I haven't been running it is I've been just busting out on this old Meadows. I've been begged to sell that mill. I'm probably not going to sell it. I still like my band mill. I like working with it. It's a lot less fuel, and fuel's getting kind of high, but it's slower by a lot. So it's just one of those things. Yeah. Thanks, you guys. If you like this sort of stuff, share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. The ones that have subscribed, really greatly appreciate it. Really do. And I'll see you guys on the next video.